Hi, welcome everybody. We appreciate you very much for joining us. This is it's really good to see you guys. This is Maurice. Now, some of you are thinking now we've been at home now, basically in home stay for about 2 weeks, and a lot of us have already set things up. This seminar, this webinar is about setting up and managing. I'm only interested about the managing part, so hang on in there, because what I want to show you is that the two go together really well. The title is How to Set Up Remote Teams and how to manage this so they can be high performance. Okay, so I'm going to cover two scenarios that happen in real life. Through it all, you correctly, it's like a domino effect. Once you set things up in a domino line and then you press the domino, the first domino, they all it's kind of fun to watch. Okay, well, it's the same thing. If you set it up correctly and you do the initial grunt work of just making sure things are set up, then it's a whole lot easier to provide the support that you want to provide your remote teams, and then build a culture around it. And so that's what we're going to break it up into: is how to do the setup, how to support the setup, how to support the teams, and then how to build a culture around it so that it's not only fun but very engaging, very rewarding. All right, so we're going to dissect each one of these a little later towards the end of the talk, and then of course I'll be addressing questions as we go. All right, so the first scenario I want to share with you is a real life scenario that I was hired, I was promoted back in my young early days when I was a young pup right out of school. And what happened was I was working in a technical support department, and there was an opening in marketing and development, and so the company decided to promote a lot of the technical support technicians and a lot of the customer service reps into those roles, because we knew the software, we knew our product, we knew the services. So we were very good at our technical support and our customer service department. We're very good at helping customers. And so they only promoted those that were high performing. So there was about 7 to 10 of us. A couple of us got sent to Europe. Some of us got sent to another department. Others were able to open up remote offices. So it was a real great opportunity. We were a national software company. It was a leading software utility company at that time in the early 90s. And so I was selected. I was given the opportunity to apply for the position, and I was selected to move into product development. All right. And so the scenario was this: that the company had 5 programming teams throughout the country. As a matter of fact, you don't see one of the dots there. Let me move my screen. Okay. What we had 5 teams remotely and 1 locally. So my responsibility was to interact, support, work with each one of these software houses in these different locations. But not everybody in those locations worked in their office. Most of their teams worked remotely at home. So I had people at hubs and I had people remotely from there. Okay, so they were scattered all within the cities. And the reason I showed you the time map of the time zones is because you want to keep aware of that when you're setting up calls or you're calling people and you forget where they're all sitting, which is why I checklist step number 1 is important: is who is remote, who's not remote, who's at the office, what time zone they are. We'll get that in a minute. All right, but I had the scenario of managing these folks, but I was being promoted into a position that was already being managed by somebody else. It's just that they were going to move on to something else, they were growing in the company. So they promoted us to fill in the spot. So it was really cool. So let me go over the list and I'll show you how it worked out. All right. So here's the list that I've provided you guys. Okay. And there's the 10 items: the who, the tools, the setup, the goals, the non-remote tasks, the progress reports, the frequent regular communications, the leadership rhythm, the team-wide calls, how to provide training, and how to build fun around it. Okay, so this seems like a very innocuous list, and you kind of go, well, yeah, all that's, man, you can get that in a book at Books A Million. You know, I mean, what's the difference? But it's how you approach it and how you work these things together. So when they were sitting down with us, as they were promoting us, they hadn't yet announced us. Okay, it was all through the recruiting process. They showed us how it was that they were managing, and they pretty much showed a similar list like this. Okay, I didn't have this list back then. I've built it ever since, and they basically went through it and said, all right, Maurice, look, here's where everyone's seated. Here's who's at the offices. Here's their contact information. Here's who's working remotely in those cities. And so they gave me a spreadsheet, a list of everybody, and I pretty much knew who was who. Okay, and I had all their phone numbers, information. That helped. That helped a whole lot. All right. Then they assured me, all right, Maurice, look, all the teams are set up. They all have their tools. They're all set up. They all have their equipment. They've been working they've all been working very well. We're hiring some new programmers, but as they come on board, each hub leader, each team leader knows how to onboard them, knows how to get them their tools, how to get them all set up. Is wonderful. Okay. They gave me the names of all the folks, of all the team leaders, of all the regional directors. And so I interacted with them to make sure that everyone had their tools and their setup, so that when they came into work, there was no surprise as to where they sat, whether they were remote, if they had webcams at home, whether they had scanners at home, whether they had the equipment, do they have the right chairs. We even offered them and helped them go into their homes and help them fill out their workspace. Did they need desks? As a matter of fact, one of the offices, we actually created a nice little corner area in their living room, and the company just showed an incredible amount of support. Why? Because we knew that if it's important for you to have a good workspace at the office, then you have to make sure that you have a good workspace at home, because the homes were probably not built to have them working at home. So we kind of had to invest in that, and that we just didn't spare any expenses. Why? Because if they're going to work from home, we needed to make sure they had everything they needed. So the tools and the setup, they were set up. All right. So then they sat us down and they showed us, all right, Maurice, everyone has their goals. You're not building teams. They're already working. They're already producing. So don't move into micromanaging. They're all basically doing really well. All right. But they all work from very, very specific goals. They have their regular meetings. You need to chime in and participate on those, but they know how to run themselves. Okay. Don't go in there and try to rechange the furniture and prove yourself. Prove yourself by supporting. So I said, okay, well, great. So for each software team, they showed me their game plans. They showed me their project plans. They showed me the week by week progress of when they needed to turn in different modules. They showed me the end goals of when the softwares were going to be released. So it was very organized. Okay, that they pretty much all had a copy of it, and they all had their own tasks and their own assignments. And it was really nicely set up. Okay, very simple. They used Microsoft Project at that time. Some of them used Microsoft Spreadsheet, but everyone knew what their goals were on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and actually the whole timeline of their projects. So check mark, that was done. All right, then what was interesting, as I started talking to, when I finally got hired and announced, when I started talking to the teams, they started identifying for me the things that they needed us to do at the home office. So although this was not as focused, I still considered it a check mark, because they knew to ask, look, here's the stuff we can't do at home and we can't do remotely. We need the home office to do, so we make sure that was done. All right, then the progress reports. Because they had their goals and they knew what to do, they knew where to go into the software, whether it was the shared files. See, now back then we didn't have shared files, so we emailed a lot of attachments to each other. I certainly do not encourage you to do email attachments on this whatsoever, because you will chase more files than it's worth, and you'll spend a lot of time. You'll waste a lot of time chasing files, as opposed to having things on a shared folder and everyone knows where to go in and update their reports. All right, so this team, all these teams, they had their spreadsheets and they all knew to update them, and they had to turn them in by a certain time, because the basic rule was, Maurice, if you want to be efficient and effective on this, you can't be chasing people around asking them, where are we, why didn't you? Okay, we already have them accustomed that you meet with them on a regular basis. Open up the spreadsheets. They know how to upload the information at a certain time. And then when you dive in with them, you guys open up the document and start saying, all right, good. Congratulate them on where things are going well. What's the delay on these areas? What can I do to help you? Is there anything we can do at the home office? How does it look like for our weekly, monthly goals? What's our projection? But you don't start off by chasing people as to where they are, because everyone's responsible and everybody's already used to knowing where things are at, where they can go and fill out that information. All right, well then that's a check mark on number 5. Then let's go to number 6. All right, number 6 is regular communication. They didn't leave it, quote, up to me to figure out when to chase them. They had already set with the Seattle team at a certain time, with the Chicago team at a certain time. the Atlanta team at a certain time, and they said, Maurice, here's the schedule of when they have their meetings with each other. Here's the schedule of when they have meetings with you. Okay, and then here's the meeting what you're going to have with us. So I'll cover that under number 7 in a minute. But they gave me the schedule of the routine that they were already accustomed. So I said, man, this is fantastic. I don't have to prod them to put it on the schedule. It's already there. I'm just stepping into a routine, and I'm like, this is great. So sure enough, when I got hired for about a month and a half, I shadowed my supervisor, and he showed me how to do it, and he showed me how to have those meetings. And it was really good that he did a handoff rather than, hey, here you go, Maurice, because I'd never been in those meetings. So I had to watch their style, their personalities, and really get to know them on how they had those meetings so they were effective. Some meetings were short, 15, 20, 30 minutes. Some meetings were long, an hour, hour and a half, depending on the project. So we always allotted a good hour to an hour and a half, but we didn't always use that time if it was not necessary. But the key thing is that there was a regular time in which that connection happened, that alignment happened. And then above that, it was up to me to make sure that between those regular rhythm meetings, I would stay in touch with them on a random basis so that they didn't feel disconnected and I didn't feel disconnected. So that I didn't just depend on that one-time meeting, because that's not real life. Things happen at the speed of business, so you have to talk randomly and frequently. But there has to be a good percentage, a good 30-40% of the time that it's regular, consistent rhythm meetings, and about 60-70% where it's random, pick up the phone, ad hoc. So check mark. That was already set up. All I had to do was walk into that. All right, then this part, although everything's important here, every domino is important, this one, number 7, is extremely critical. And it was this. All right, Maurice, we meet as a leadership team on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock and on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. And then we have an all-team meeting on Fridays. So on the Tuesday 9 o'clock meeting and the Thursday 9 o'clock meeting, the directors of programming come in, customer service comes in, technical support comes in, marketing comes in, the owners come in, the IT team comes in, and we have an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting in which we look at everything, the whole of the business. And in that meeting is where we're going to talk about the progress of where all the projects are. We're going to identify the key rocks, the key milestones. Then we're going to make sure that we know why things aren't happening and what do we need to do to support, what do we need to train. Then we're going to give each one of you feedback on what you need to bring back to them so that you're the connector. All right. And so you need to come into those meetings. I knew what the next statement was going to be, is you need to come into those meetings ready. And so I pretty much said, all right, I put on my schedule on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock and on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. That's when the leadership team meeting happens, where we are going to support everyone else. So I have to have my rhythm meetings with my support teams before that, everyone knowing that there's going to be a conversation, which, boom, number 7, check, it worked. It works, guys. I learned that in the early 90s, and I've used that same rhythm in all my professional development, all my careers, positions, and then in coaching and consulting clients. You keep a rhythm meeting, and you make sure that you have a rhythm meeting with the remote teams, and then you have a rhythm meeting with the leadership team to bring things up to them, and then they bring things down, and you're the glue that creates that alignment of communication. All right, then number 8. Number 8's kind of fascinating. It's kind of cool. I've never seen this before, but it was pretty good to see it. On Fridays, the executives were accustomed to doing this all teams meeting in which they we used to jokingly say they pontificated positiveness. Okay. So they were very positive, and they loved to get on the high horse and just scream encouragement, support. It was vastly and mostly very positive. If it got to be negative and corrective, we dealt with each individual team in those individual meetings. But the point of the all team calls was to get the executives involved so that they were seen by the remote teams. Okay, they saw me all the time. They heard me all the time. I've oftentimes brought my VP. So we were in the grunt work, in and out every day, every week. So they'd seen us, but what we needed was to have the executives have a place where they shined and they showed the direction, the vision, and they could hear back from everybody else. And it was a fantastic, fascinating connection, because everyone felt more connected being remote than a lot of times the people in home office. Okay. And that was often the complaint, that we cared more about the remote teams than we did the home office. And if you can make that the problem, you're doing it right. Okay. Because by default, every time you set up remote teams, the more you build remote teams, the more everyone's going to feel disconnected. So you have to make sure that that you create the opposite problem. Okay. And if you get to hear people complain that, man, I want to be a remote team member, well, that's good. Okay. But that only happens because of the incredible amount of engagement that happens on a regular basis on items number 6, number 7, and number 8. The regular communication, the leadership rhythm, and the team calls is all about supporting them and making sure that there's this focus and no one disappears. Okay. And you, the supervisor in the middle, are the glue that makes all this happen. So boom, check mark, number 8. Okay. Then as I'm meeting with them, man, the amount of stuff that would come out about programmers needing training, programmers needing assistance, support, phone skills. They needed, we needed to send them to some program because back then it was a Visual Basic that was coming out, and so we needed to find new training, online training, bring trainers in house. Also, training to go into those hubs and train them, or also find national trainers that were willing to do remote training on phone calls and videos. And remember, the technology back then is not what it was now, but we set it up and it happened, and we had a training coordinator. For a large operation like that, we had one full-time training coordinator and an assistant. So it was amazing that 2 individuals, full-time individuals, a training coordinator and an HR assistant, could sustain a team of about 400 to 500 people. Okay. So check mark, provide training. And then 10, build an incredible amount of fun. First of all, those programming teams, they held a huge carrot. Every milestone, every month, every quarter, every project finish that they came in on time with a certain amount of bug percentages. In other words, you can't have more than X number of bugs, or you can't have showstopper. There were some ways in which we would rate them. And every time they knew how to hit their marks, man, an incredible amount of rewards happened. All right. Then we would also provide ongoing types of contests. We allowed them to come up with some of them. And in one company, we actually set up point system to where if they hit their weekly goals, they would get points additional to it, some kind of bonuses, financial bonuses, but they could get points. And if you racked up enough points, you could then go into the store of the office, which was on the intranet, and you could actually purchase stuff, kind of like we had our own Amazon.com. It was really cool. Anyway, so you had a lot of fun, and we encouraged them to have their own fun contests within each department, within each area. So my responsibility was to make sure that they were keeping the numbers. If they could keep the numbers, it was a whole lot easier for me to then go up to the powers that be and say, look, we're doing really well. I need more money. I need more investment on your part to help me let them create their own contests, their own excitement. And sure enough, I just fed the budget, and they fed me the numbers. So it was check mark. Okay, so it was not hard to be successful. Me as a manager came into that position. It was all set up. But now let's go to the second scenario. Okay. By the way, yeah, let me say that. Okay. It was all set up. My responsibility was to make sure that I was consistent on 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were already set up for me. Okay. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 was me diligently working the model and working the process from what they had set up and keeping the same routine. I brought in my own style, but I kept the same routine. I didn't let it fall apart. All right. So there's the items. Okay. So let me break it up to you in like this. Okay. The first 5 is what I would call the setup. That's where you do your setup. Okay. Then the next 3 items, 6, 7, and 8 is what I would refer to as where you provide support. Okay. And then the last 2 is where you provide the culture. Okay. So you're constantly always making sure none of these things fall apart. Just because it got set up correctly, it doesn't mean it's going to stay set up correctly. All right. So because the tools change, because the equipment breaks down, because you need backup equipment. You're always checking to make sure, does everyone have their tools, their equipment, the goals, the progress reports, and so you don't just set it up and forget about it. You're always visiting that. You're providing the support, and then you back it up with the culture behind it. Okay.